Yo, yo, yo.
Yeah. What's happening?
This is Religiously Incorrect. I don't know what episode it is, but it is September 27th, 2020. Jeff, we're still in the land of the living.
Man, listen, we have made it almost all the way through the year of 2020.
Man, what kind of year has been, man? It's crazy. To everybody watching, thank you for joining us. Would you please jump in the comments, say hey, say hi. My name is Pastor Todd. I got Pastor Jeff with us. We have a wonderful show for you tonight. We're so glad you joined with us. It's Sunday night. We've all watched football. Let's just get it out the way, Jeff. Browns and Steelers both won. Both look pretty good today. So there's really no ragging. We won't rag today.
No ragging.
Good, did their thing. I'm still going to show you this. I'm still
I ain't bring none of my brown stuff down there. I'm just going to let the wind talk for itself.
Oh, okay.
Everybody like, share, post, tag. In that order. Like, share, post, tag.
Like a true preacher, you always gotta
in that order.
Line it up. Now give me your hoop.
Hey, listen, real quick. I know we on a time limit today. I just want to give a big shout out. 5 years, happy anniversary. God bless you and your wife. You know what I mean? 5 years in ministry at the historic Second Baptist Church on Main Street.
15 Main Avenue, Southwest.
Yes.
Ohio, a house of hope.
Yes.
Hey, Pastor Barnes, Pastor Jackson, I thank you so much for the love, the church family. We appreciate everybody. It's been amazing. And Lord knows what God has in store for everyone. So, Jeff, kick us off. First of all, if you're watching, please let us know you're here. Please hit that share button. Like all that stuff Jeff said. The preacher said it, so you already heard it. Jeff, what are we talking about? What are we kicking off with?
And we are kicking off with, man, we're going to talk a little bit about Breonna Taylor, man. We just going to talk a little bit about it. We don't want to really talk about her too much. I want to, I just want to talk for a few seconds about the comments that Big Chuck, Charles Barkley, and Shaq kind of, joined in on it by saying that, this was not the same. We can't put this shooting in the same category as many of the other shootings took place. And once again, I have to say that, even if I agree with it, I don't think that was the right setting to say it. I think it is still cause for disunity in the community. I think while we're trying to come together to stop these police shootings from happening, period.
Right. Whether
it's an accident, whether it was meant to be, whether, whatever the circumstances was, I don't think we need anybody standing. I said this on Facebook and I'll say it again. If what you say does not add to the silence, then just shut up.
Yeah.
And I think that is a wise words for everybody. If what you say does not add to the silence, then just shut up. I mean, you don't have to say anything. You didn't have to say anything on national TV. Just because you have an audience does not mean you have to say stuff that you are uneducated in.
Well, to the point, Pastor Jeff, is we as African Americans who are in positions of prominence, we have to use our voice responsibly. Absolutely. And understand how our voices can be manipulated, whether we intend to or not. Maybe they were just expressing the types of opinions that people do have at home in their living rooms, but they are not at home in their living room. They're on national TV in front of millions of people. And there are lots of aspects in situations like these that can go into a conversation, but that's why you have to be very cautious with your platform and how people might use what you're saying to prove a point that actually ends up harming and hurting people of color. And so I'm not like, oh, you're a bunch of coons or house Negroes or whatever, but yeah, and people might feel that way. And maybe they've said other things that might be able to justify that type of opinion of them. But whether or not they feel that they are of that way or that, opinion, they have to think about what this does to the millions of young people who say, when I do mess up, are the people who I look up to going to justify my death? Even if I've messed up, even if there is some, are they going to justify an egregiously overreaction and violent act against me nobody says that drug dealing is good or associating with people. We do spend all of our time warning young people against this type of stuff.
Right.
But at the same time, stealing a candy bar is not supposed to be a death sentence.
Absolutely.
Getting pulled over for not having a license is not supposed to result in a shooting. And as I've said, and I went to a police training, and I don't want to get off on that. We should talk about it. I went to one last week. Didn't even want to go. It was the day after they announced the verdict. I mean, I'm with these dudes like, I don't even like y'all, but I guess I'll just be here because I'm not going to punk out. I'm not going to punk out. But I sat here like, sudden movements, man. Sudden movements in relatively nonviolent, situations. So I would just say that I don't care if you're a pastor, if you're a public figure, if you're a politician, there still should be a solidarity to Black people.
Use your platform intelligently, wisely, and when you use it, come on, Shaq, come on, bruh. You know what I mean?
It's not like we understand you anyway.
If
I could cross my eyes, I would. If I could, but I'd have to like put my finger in a socket to be able to cross my eyes as bad. But I mean, and it's a joke to them. But to be honest, if you carry on like that, you become a joke to us.
Right.
So go back to selling Papa John's pizza, whatever you do.
Right.
Leave the serious issues.
Right. It's play with the little guy on the Geico commercial.
Yeah. Do the lizard or whatever that, do that until he gets shot, and you'll probably cry more for the lizard than you will for Black people.
Tell me this, how in the world he getting that little convertible?
He doesn't. He doesn't. It's like Tiger Woods when he was in a Buick commercial. Like, you don't drive no Buick.
Right.
Well, you don't win the U.S. Open and go home in a century. My uncle drives a Buick, not you. You don't even have Geico. They got that billionaire insurance. They got that, if you cut your pinky off, you get $12 million or something like that. Right. So anyway, I mean, we don't want to rag because, I'm not going to put down in response to a put down, but some of us need to learn how to just be quiet. Absolutely. To be honest, we need to be quiet. So
there it is.
This episode, for everybody watching, sharing, I see you all coming in. Thank you very much. I want to say hi to everybody that said hello. Mary Morgan Hope joined us.
Hey, Sister Hope.
Good to see you. Want to get this out there. Alex wished me a happy anniversary. Thank you very much. We appreciate that. And Marla, of course, with wisdom, they should have had that conversation offset in their home or dressing rooms. And you're absolutely right. They should have done that. Thank you, Sister Mitchell. So this subject tonight is called When She Speaks.
Yes.
When She Speaks. And we are talking tonight about the role, maybe even a little bit of history and maybe the future of women in ministry. And Pastor Jeff, you and I are obviously men. Just gonna
got some long hair.
Make an assumption.
Even.
And let's just be clear here. The ministry is male dominated. It is a male dominated, and let's just be honest, in just about every industry. I mean, so many industries. I mean, the stereotypes of what women can do in our world is like, stewardess, waitress, teacher. It's so limited, and honestly, it is 2020 and really hasn't changed in most people's minds. It has not changed, and we are ever evolving and growing. And I don't think fast enough. I don't think at the speed enough. And so the church is not out of the woods on this. Matter of fact, we're behind the times.
Extremely. It has come to me where, and most of our churches are predominantly women. And
there's no church without them, man.
And we yet and still put them on the back burner as to what they can do, what they shouldn't do, and what they will do in the church that most of them save in that week in and week out. Because had it not been for them, many of these churches would be shut down. So
there'd be no offering. Let's keep it real here. There'd be my grandma put the bricks on the church. She cooked the ribs and put the bricks on. When they fell down, she cleaned them off and put them back on. I said, now, Grandma, I would have took that as a sign from God and just walked away from the whole project. If I'm building the building and the brick fall on me, I'm going home. I'm like, Lord, this ain't you. But you're absolutely right. And by the way, I mean, we are really speaking archaic language. We're talking about they and them, and it, because that's how deep it is. Even allies struggle. It's almost like white and black. Like even how your white allies be like, am I saying this right?
Right.
Am I like, you know, they love you, you know, they're honest, but they can't help what they have or have not been exposed to. And honestly, as a young man, I'm only 38. You're only in your 40s, Pastor Jeff. We are part of the younger, more progressive, open-minded generation and still struggling in how to communicate and perhaps even participate alongside our sisters in ministry. So if you are a female minister, pastor, elder, evangelist, we are celebrating you today. We are wanting to talk about your role, your worth, your value. We call the episode When She Speaks, but I like Pastor Jeff's. I'm gonna give you a shout out, Pastor Jeff. I liked your title was A Woman's Worth.
Well, you know, it didn't get used, so I mean, I ain't upset about it, but I'm glad you did like it. It was a cool title.
You want me to play the song? You want me to play the Maxwell? I mean the song. Stop! Wait! Stop!
Falsetto. I was the falsetto. Did you hear it?
Jeff, we just talked about this.
Regular guest, man. Let's talk.
When we're ready to do the Prince tribute, I'll let you know. All right, here are our guests. We are not alone tonight. We have two of the most powerful, and by the way, we could have called anybody. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of people, a lot of dynamic, incredible women of God, a lot of our sisters who are serving, who are impacting, who are building, who have literally led people to Christ and beyond, and undergirded the overall gospel ministry that impacts our world. So our choice is just because we can't have everybody, because there are so many wonderful people. Right, absolutely. Elder Carter is on it. She always is. So we love you, Elder Carter. We love you. Love you. But here are our guests tonight, the wonderful, powerful preaching. I mean, this lady just has my heart. She's
the incomparable.
I'm claiming her as grandma. She's just mine. Y'all, you got to make room for me somewhere. Reverend Gena Thornton. Reverend Gena Thornton is with us. How are you doing, Reverend Gena?
Today. How are you? Thank you for inviting me.
Hey, man.
And we have her powerful prognosticator. That was Jeff's word today. Prognosticator of the gospel. I heard that this morning, Jeff. I heard it.
Pontificator.
Pontificator.
The prolific pontificator.
Prolific pontificator of the whole counsel of God.
Yes.
She's not the man of God. She's the woman of God.
The woman of God.
With a D on the end. The one and only Reverend Dr. Robin Woodberry.
Yeah.
Hey, Dr. Rob.
Good evening, man. Y'all need medication. That's all I'm gonna say. It's way too late tonight for y'all to have this much energy. Oh my God.
Listen, you know what makes it so special? We have a mother-daughter ministry combo. And it's so common. My father's a pastor. I'm a third generation. My great-grandfather was a pastor, the legendary Reverend Bentley H. Dow. And then my father's a pastor, and I'm a pastor. I'm about to force one of my boys to be a pastor. And it's just so common for our males to have that passed down. You know, it's just, we just expect it. But to see this is so special. And I know the both of you have probably already been told and experienced how unique, and wonderful and inspiring it is. But I want you to hear from me that I'm just blessed to know the both of you.
Amen.
Both of you. And we're so grateful to have you on. So people are saying hi. Everybody loves. Everybody loves Reverend Rob and Reverend Gena. Yes. Grace AME for years and years. And you pastored in Cleveland as well, Reverend Thornton.
Yes,
and
I did.
Dr. Rob served for years at New Bethel. I mean, you are the fuel, the fuel that kept that wonderful church going, and we really appreciate you. You recently have been transitioning, and I want you to tell us about what you're doing and all of that. But let's start with Reverend Gena. Just tell us how you're doing and what you're doing, and a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm learning. I retired in 2014 in the AME church at 75. If you're pastoring, you have to retire from pastoring. And that's what it's saying, you know. Sometimes others don't do that, but the book says that we are to retire. So I retired in 2014 from Grace AME in Warren. And I've just been trying to learn this all of this phone and computer stuff that's going on now. I didn't even know what a podcast was. Is that what you said? When my daughter said that Pastor Todd was going to call me to be on a podcast, I said, what is that? And her answer was, I'm so excited. And I said, I am so scared. I don't know. We're not allowed to curse, so I can't say I don't know.
Oh, no. This is a free environment.
I don't know what I am doing.
Yes. I'm going to Grace, Doc. I'm going to Grace.
So I'm just trying to learn how to do that. I've been doing the Nugget on Facebook and preaching wherever I can and teaching. That is what I love to do most, is teaching. And so that's where I'm at right now.
And I want to give you a shout out because I have seen several of your nuggets with the I Vote Black t-shirt on. And I say, there's Mama Thornton with the I Vote Black. Thanks for representing. And Reverend Rob has hers too. I see her. She has it too. Reverend Rob, tell us, how are you doing? What are you doing? What's going on with you?
I'm doing all kinds of stuff. Oh my goodness. So I officially retired from my role at New Bethel at the end of August. And so I am in the Episcopal Church, where the AME came out of the Episcopal Church. But I'm what's called a postulant for holy orders, which is a real flowery word that means that I'm in the process of becoming a priest, which is what they call their pastors. So, and I am doing an internship at a church, Christ Church in Hudson, Ohio. So Sundays I go up to Hudson and we're doing in-person worship services now. We're back to doing that, as well as doing services on Facebook and Zoom. So they're keeping me busy.
I'm sure. Sure. That's amazing. Pastor Reverend Thornton, how long did you pastor between all of your churches? How long did you spend in pastoral ministry?
27 years. I was in Cleveland 23 years. I pastored in Cleveland, my first church, and I was there 9 years, and then I went to the west side of Cleveland, and I pastored there 13 years. And then I came, my children just carried on so terrible about me being on the road so much, traveling so much. And so, and they didn't want to say, you're just getting old, Mama, you need to come home. But when we built the new church, I was 70 years old when we dedicated that church. And so my children just, kept fretting about me just being gone so much. And so I came to Grace, and my last 5 years was in Grace. So the largest percentage of my pastoring was in Cleveland. I traveled a lot.
Gotcha. And when were you ordained and first got into the ministry? What year was that?
In 1976. I was licensed in 1976 at New Bethel Baptist, and then I was ordained in 79. And I do want to say this, that New Bethel sent me to school. If I don't know what would have happened to me if I had not, because when I was called, I was married with children. And when I was ordained, I was carrying my last baby. And so if it wasn't for New Bethel having the vision, to just invest in their ministers, I don't know what would have happened. But they sent me to school. paid for my schooling, paid for my books, and helped me just become prepared. And then I had to leave. Just like Robin, I had to leave because there was no church that would call me in this area at all. So I went into the AME church.
Wow. Now, Pastor Jeff, before you ask your question, do we need to have a meeting with our boards about paying for us?
I was about to say, churches don't do it. You know, Pastor Harrison did send me to school. Pastor Harrison in Union Baptist Church. I gotta say that but we do need to have a talk with our boards and see if we can finish that up.
Hey, we were shooting down in Alabama, so we got more leverage this time.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. They used to do that too. They used to bring them guns to the church. Thank God for your dad being a pastor, Pastor Todd. Obviously, we know Pastor Johnson. My great grandmother was Reverend Anna Lee Walls, was one of the first Black pastors in Youngstown, Ohio, at Christ Universal. I set up under the great Pastor Reverend Powell for a long time. She was my grandmother was my first pastor, but I was just there for the cookies and milk. I was she made cookies and milk. All the cookies and milk in Sunday school. That was it. Every Sunday school. I know nothing about that. I still do remember Holy, Holy, Holy. It's the song that came out on every single Sunday. Lord God Almighty, God in three persons. But then my first pastor was Reverend Elizabeth Powell, who was phenomenal. I got to watch the struggle that she went through, and we thank God for Reverend Lee and Reverend Simon helping her and all that she went through. And then I was fortunate enough to get ordained. My first ordination was under Loretta Pernice, Pastor, I think it's now Apostle Loretta Pernice.
Get it right.
Here in Warren at Elam Christian Center. And I got to see the transition in all these different woman pastors. I guess my question here, Reverend Rob, is that, you are fortunate and blessed enough to have had your mother and growing up in the ministry. We have a lot of young ladies online right now who may be trying to get in the ministry that don't have your mother and don't have this type of example. What would you say to them?
As far as looking to come into ministry or just in general?
What sound advice would you give them? However.
Oh, man. Grab hold to whomever you can that you connect with spiritually, that you feel can be that support, that mentor, that spiritual director, whatever the case may be. I am fortunate that person is my mother. But if she wasn't here, wasn't in the role that she is in now, I would definitely need to have somebody like that. You have to have somebody like that, that you can call, somebody that you can trust, that you can share with your fears, your struggles, your anxiety, your goals, your visions, your dreams, everything. And so I can pick up the phone and call my mom and say, "Mom, I'm dealing with this." But if you don't have a mother who's in a place to do that for you, then find somebody who can. And there are women out there, I promise you, who can serve in that capacity. Whatever you tell them will stay with them. They'll pray with you. They'll pray for you. They'll give you words of wisdom and so forth. So just know that there are people out there. Pray and ask God to bring them across your path. And he'll do it because he wants you to be successful in what he has for you to do.
Amen.
Right. Mm-hmm. Reverend Thornton, we know you're not the first, but when you think about the 70s being ordained, licensed and ordained in the 70s, it's obviously still quite some time ago. And ideas about ministry and women's roles in ministry were very entrenched. I want to balance the question. So give us, I hate to say the word dark, but give us the dark side of that. And again, we don't have to say names or anything. If anything gets, and then like a light side, like a side, and you did mention about the affirmation of New Bethel, but give us both sides, like you experienced, maybe the depths and the heights of what that young experience was like?
Well, the dark side was when, even though and I want to say this while I'm thinking about it, and that is Robin is the 4th generation in our family of women ministers, pastors, the 4th generation. And so my mother was a minister, and my grandmother on both sides of my family, my father's mother and my mother's mother were preachers, and one founded a church. So Robin is like that 4th generation for women. But when I came into the ministry, I didn't know enough to protect myself, or I don't know what the word I want to use. I didn't know how to protect myself as a woman, because when male pastors would say to me, when I was started into seminary, they said, God would never call a woman to preach. And they would show you scriptures that Paul, words that Paul wrote. I keep the women silent in the church and those kind of things. And so that's what would floor me. I would say to God, why would you call me to do something that the Bible says I shouldn't do? I just didn't know how to protect myself. I didn't know enough about it to be able to protect myself. And so I had one of my babies was little, maybe Manasseh or Joshua, and I got up in the middle of the night to feed the baby, and I was just crying, and I told God, you just have to help me. Why would you do that? And after I cried and cried and cried all the tears out, the Spirit said to me, read the writing in red. And I said, the writing in red? And that's when I remembered that the writing in red in the Bible is what Jesus said. So I started studying what Jesus said instead of just following what Paul was saying. I started following what Jesus was saying. And I never heard him say, she shouldn't do that. You know, when Mary was sitting at the feet of Jesus and Martha said, you better bring her in here and help me, help her with this dinner.
Yeah.
this cheesecake and these greens.
Yes.
And Jesus says, no, I won't.
That's right.
No, I won't. Because she's chosen the best part. And so I never saw where Jesus ever said, you shouldn't do that. You can't do that. And so that brightened my life. That brightened my life. But there has always been people, when Robin says that God will bring across your path, men and women who God had placed in my path to carry me to a certain point. Many of them don't stay with you all the time. Some will die off, and some of you just move beyond. But there was a man named Deacon Lewis Riggins, and he had been the chairman of the deacon board at Mount Zion Mount Zion Baptist Church for 40 years, and he left Mount Zion and came to New Bethel just at the time that I was being called. And he was sick, and God gave me a word of knowledge for him. He was in the hospital, been in the hospital 52 days. And he met Jesus in that room that day. And he said to me, when he came out of the hospital, he was in church every Sunday, but he started riding with me on Mondays when I taught a class in Cleveland every Monday at a lady's house. And he started riding with me. And he said to me, I was a religious politician.
Mm.
I knew what the preacher needed. I got what he needed. I knew how to, lead devotions and serve communion and all of that. But I didn't know who Jesus was until I was in the hospital room that day. And so he taught me how to pastor. He wasn't a pastor, but he knew what a pastor should be.
Wow.
And I drove to Bible class and he sat on that passenger seat and just talked to me and showed me, told me what to do and how to be quiet in certain times when you were talking about it. Sometimes you need to, you have the right to remain silent because whatever you say is going to be used against you.
Yeah.
I got she's preaching now, Doc.
I want to defer to Jeff for a second, but I do have a really good question based on a comment that Reverend Elder Joseph Dwayne heard from the Elizabeth Missionary Baptist Church. And by the way, I want to shout him out for being an affirming and supportive pastor of women in ministry.
Yes. Yep.
I'm going to post the comment up again. It is unfortunate to lose such anointed vessels in the Baptist Church, with you both being ordained and licensed in the Baptist Church, or at least strong participants all your time, and then end up going to other places. So Reverend Rob, you've been around and you've watched, you're seeing the evolving as it's happening in real time. Do you think that some of the denominations, the major denominations in particular, and I'll stick with Black denominations especially, that are still restrictive, do you think they're going to see the writing on the wall, whether it's through divine inspiration or practical shifts that, however it happens? Do you think that in any near future, there's going to be a breakdown in one of our major denominations or reformations in the Black church? We have some Pentecostals, we have some Baptists, what do you think?
I would like to, I would like to say that I hope so. Honestly, in the near future, I don't know, to be honest with you, because to tell you the truth, with it being towards the end of 2020, I would have thought we would be a lot farther than we are right now. And it's a little disheartening that we are not. I appreciate Pastor Hurd's comment. So thank you, Pastor Hurd. I appreciate that. But, the fact that we're still fighting this fight it kind of blows my mind. And I'm not sure what it's really going to take. Maybe I hate to say it, but the old guard and the old mentality has to move off the scene. Because there's still that mentality that women can only play certain roles. Maybe they could preach. We've gotten to that point. They can preach, women can preach, but they can't be pastors. So I'm it's a mentality thing. And so, when you ask Mom about the, like her aha moment, and she talked about the writing in red, for me, it was the upper room when, God took me to that scripture about the people in the upper room. There were 120 some people. And do you know that women were in the upper room? And so the Holy Spirit fell on everybody that was in that room, and he did not. Everybody did not differentiate which one were women and which one were men. Y'all hear what I'm saying? So everybody in there received the Holy Spirit, and they all left up out of there doing what the Holy Spirit led them to do, including the women. And so that for me was an aha moment. When that aha moment is going to come for, different denominations, I'm not sure, but it's a travesty. I have to agree with Pastor Hurd that churches would be so restrictive or limited in their understanding of how God can use a woman that they will allow women to just sit in the pew and be oppressed, so to speak, and not be allowed to be all that God has called them to be, and to utilize everything that he has given them for the body. It's for the body. It's not for me. It's not, for show. It's for the body of Christ. And we all have a role to play in that body. And so it's sad. I think, I wish that I had not had to look for another avenue in which I could be used to my fullest potential. But here we are. And so, you know.
And I share that as a male pastor, coming to the edge of the reasoning, the biblical reasoning, which again, you understand what you understand as you understand it. And often it comes off of what you've been told and not what you have read or balanced yourself. There is enough out there that if you took the time to study the counter arguments theologically, that really do blow up even Paul's words contextually, if you choose to acknowledge, like many points of theology that they're necessarily right or wrong, but different ways of looking. And perhaps some of this has to do with our limited knowledge of reading King James, archaic language sometimes through our own limited, we can barely speak English, you know. Right. Greek and Hebrew, and we're barely mastering our own language. It reminds me of what a rabbi said when we were in Israel, and one of our evangelical brothers made a very out of context comment, just from their own perspective about Israel and America and whatever. And he basically said, trying to read the Hebrew scriptures or interpret the Hebrew scriptures through the Western lens and English language is like kissing a bride through her veil. It's like you kissed it, but you didn't really kiss her. And he was kind of a slap down because the man was being very arrogant. But Tatum Osborne, Pastor Tatum Osborne, who is from she always corrects me. It's Brooklyn, New York, right? Tatum, Pastor Tatum. I
remember it from last week. Yes, it's
Brooklyn. Yeah, it was Brooklyn. She will get me. She is one of my Berean sisters in the Berean Fellowship under Bishop Timothy J. Clark. So we connect every year at First Church of God. Her and Pastor Kevin pastor together. And she said it's not just in the Baptist church. They affirm women preachers in the Church of God. And I've seen your post. Tatum is pushing. Pastor Osborne is pushing for young ministers. And they have even created platforms and avenues for young ladies who feel called to ministry to be able to connect and be poured into because of the inequities. And basically, you use the word, Robin, and it's correct. It's oppression. Mm-hmm. It's oppression. So, Pastor Jeff, you want to jump in with something?
I would just say, when you look at the fact that a woman was the last person at the cross and the first person to the grave, when we look at these statistics, when we look at, earlier Reverend Gena was talking about how you need somebody to hang on with you. Today, I talked about how Elizabeth or Mary had to go to Elizabeth in her time of pregnancy. When she was pregnant with potential herself, the first place she had to go was to Elizabeth, who was already pregnant with potential, and she stayed there for 3 months. And 3 months is when you start showing. And sometimes you got to get with somebody who'll stick with you and stay with you until you start showing. Let me pull my Oregon app out.
Let me pull my Oregon app out. I'm pulling my Oregon. Pulling my Oregon out.
But you said something about the full potential, and that, I guess that's my question, is even when there are openings, they don't seem to be at predominant churches.
Right. Predominantly black churches.
Yeah, black churches. They seem to be the littler churches, and outside of Grace, many of the women pastors that I know seem to have these littler ministries. And is that a reflection on the people not wanting to follow a woman pastor? Now, and I don't understand why. I guess, I like you said, Pastor Todd, I know that a lot of it is learned behavior, and that women, like you said, can preach but not pastor. But is that something? Do we have women with, outside of Joyce Myers and Juanita Bynum? I don't even think she got her own church, do she? But you know, do we have women pastors?
She has a shofar. She has a shofar and a prayer cloth and a camera.
Shut up.
That's what she has.
Get ready. Oh,
no. She's the one that spoke in tongues on Facebook one time in the comments. She spoke in tongues in the comments one time on Facebook. I was through after that. I don't care. It's religiously incorrect. I don't care.
That's funny.
But Jeff, you brought up okay, let's bring up an elephant in the room, Pastor Jeff. We have seen that the lack of progress in the Black church has lost a generation to, out of our traditional denominations, number one, younger generations moving on out of traditional denominations. Then they're moving on into places away from our culture. Okay, so they're moving into evangelical or CCM churches or churches that do not reflect our culture, not in our communities. And we're seeing the same thing when it comes to those gifted, anointed sisters who are, in some cases, having to do the same thing, either leave our traditional denominations, perhaps either join or launch a church of their own in order to genuinely. So do you see the same dynamic at work, Reverend Rob and Sister Gena? You can jump in wherever you want to, Reverend Thornton. I mean, do you see the same dynamic at work where just like we lose generations, we're also losing gender?
I have seen that. I have colleagues now that have been called to pastor in churches that weren't our denomination. Now I'm gonna say something to that because I feel, for me, I can't speak for anybody else, but I feel for me that the doors that seem to be closed in the Baptist church was really a springboard for me to move to where I'm at right now. And the reason I say that is because I don't think the Black Baptist church really needed the kind of ministry that the Episcopal church needs.
Okay.
And the Episcopal church is really predominantly more white. I mean, there are Black Episcopals, but Episcopalians, but it's predominantly white. And I honestly, and I didn't see this at first, but I'm beginning to see it a little bit more now. Honestly, feel that what God wants to do through me is needed more in the Episcopal church than it is in the Black Baptist church. I just have to be honest with that. So I didn't see that at first, but I'm seeing it a lot more clearly now, especially with the climate that we're in, with this whole racial injustice kind of thing. And the Episcopal church is really digging and searching for what to do with this and how to move forward in that. And they need people like me to help them with that. So I see how that has worked for me. I can't speak for anybody else, but I do have colleagues. I do have sister friends that, grew up in the Baptist church or whatnot, were licensed, ordained in the Baptist church, just like I was, but now they're called to the Church of the Nazarene. They're called to, maybe a Baptist church, but, American Baptist or a different branch of the Baptist, or, so I'm seeing that a lot more. And I'm not sure what's happening. God is doing, I call it kingdom work because it's beyond denomination. As far as I'm concerned, it's kingdom work. And so, and we women, I think, are a little bit more open to that than maybe y'all fellas might be.
Well, I mean, that's really, I want to throw something out there about that, because it's tricky. Because we watched Dr. Bryant, God bless her, I thank God for her, where she's at. We watched Pastor Dawson. We were both at her installation. With those churches, do you believe those churches, those predominantly white churches, would they hire a Black man?
Huh. Yeah, some of them have.
Yeah.
They have? Okay.
It might be far and few between, but
Dr. Taylor and Thornton.
Some of them have. But I absolutely agree with what Robin says, that there's something else is happening here. something spiritual that God is doing that is literally breaking down the denominational barriers that have kept us separate from each other. And that is including the white church.
Yep.
And for some reason, since I retired, I'm preaching to the Presbyterian church.
Wow.
They call me more than the black church does, and
Wow.
and they listen. I mean, they don't talk back at you. They don't say that.
No.
They don't say that. They listen to everything you say.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
They're listening to it, and they need. This is my opinion. They need to hear the others. They need to hear the liberation gospel of Jesus.
Yeah.
They've not been exposed to that because they've had the freedom to do whatever they want whenever they want to.
Right.
And so God needs to be able to speak to them in another voice, in another, in another view. And I'm telling you, something's happening with it. Something is happening with it.
Well,
I agree.
Ladies, God is using women to lead the way in so many ways that fall outside of it's like Mary again at the feet of Jesus, and what we think is inappropriate, or we have for usually not the pure reasons. I think it was it Barnes or was it Mark that said it today about the reason Judas didn't want all that ointment to be spilled and all of that, oil to be spilled. We have our own reasons for why we're trying to keep things the same way, and they're not always pure. They're power based, they're comfort based, they're tradition based, and there is also genuine theological conviction. But I believe that we often do not allow our theology to be challenged or to grow or broaden, especially if we reach a certain place of popularity or influence, where people are almost counting on us to stand on whatever got us to where we are, and to switch up midstream would make us, as men especially, because of our egos, make us look weak. That if I become the pastor of this great church, or I become the president of this reformation, or I ascend up the ladder, and now I'm telling the people that the very things that I normally stood on, I'm starting to question and think about, then people start to go back down the line and say, well, maybe you really weren't, and I think that's, for us, it's very dangerous, ego. And in a man's ego is very, very powerful. And sometimes that's the only reason that we don't want male or female to challenge us in anything, is because, and in the black culture, you all know it has not changed in 2020. This is the only place where anybody's listening to me. This is the only place where I get to be somebody. So here I am, lording over people, and especially females. And I think, let's be honest, Pastor Jeff, I've watched guys get off on that.
Oh yeah,
a better term, and you know it. You probably felt it on your side. They get off on the fact that look, I mean, it's a preaching trope for some of our dirtier brothers that I just like to make the female swoon like I'm Sam Cooke or something. I just want to.
Yeah.
Well, here's a question for both of you, because I've seen this happen on a few occasions where they brought a woman in to speak, a woman pastor, minister, evangelist, whatever it was, but they had to speak off to the side. they couldn't get in the poop. They had to speak off to the side. For you, I mean, would that hinder you? I mean, because the word is a word, and people are going to like it or not. But I mean, would you ever say no? If I can't speak in the pulpit, I'm not speaking down on the floor.
I'm gonna let Mommy answer that because I've witnessed her deal with that. So I'm gonna let her talk on that first.
On, Mama. Bring it on, Mama.
That happened to me one time. I mean, before this particular time that it happened, I would preach wherever they assigned for me to stand. Because there were, in many cases, they wouldn't even let you in if they knew that you were a woman preacher. So wherever they had me to stand, that's where I would preach. But it happened one time after I started pastoring. I was pastoring in Cleveland, had a very successful church. And and I was invited to speak in a church that I had always preached in, but they had a new pastor. And so when I came, I always would come there every year. Then they got a new pastor. A couple of years I didn't go. So they invited me to come on a Sunday morning. And so I left my pulpit and came to this church. And the minister told me that I couldn't be in the pulpit. I had to preach from the floor. I preached all over that floor. And I told him, I went up and down the aisles because I told him, I said, I left my pulpit. I left my pulpit to come here and stand on your floor. So I said, don't you ever call me to come here again, because I don't have to do that.
Right.
But they did call me back. They called me back the next year and said, you can sit in the pulpit. We won't say that. I acted right up.
That's what I'm talking about. I need video. I want to see Mama Thornton walking pews. I want to see Mama Thornton. Yes.
I whooped him. I whooped him with a belt. I love it. How dare you invite me here out of my pulpit and have me stand on the floor? But that's all right. I'm here today. If I don't never come back no more.
Yes. Okay, I got one. And I'm going to start with Mama Thornton and then go down to Reverend Woodberry. And my question would be, when you see female ministers, they could be younger, maybe they are peers of yours. Have you ever seen them respond to the barriers and to the disrespect in a way that you feel is toxic or unhelpful? Or maybe they jump to extremes, whether it's theologically or in practice, or maybe they make it a point to preach on it and just make a big show. What are some of the things you've seen, or maybe had to maybe even counsel people, and just like things you've seen, like, I wouldn't do that. I can't support you in that, or that's some things that you've seen over the course.
Yes. Well, probably the main thing is just always whining and crying about, not being allowed in the pulpit, or where I would go into a church and I would never go to the pulpit. I'd never go to the pastor's office. I just sit down. And if they don't invite me to the pulpit, I will never go. Wherever, and as I said before, wherever a church would have me stand, that's where I would stand. You have to choose your battles. You can't fight everything. You turn people off when you're always whining about what you don't have all the time. You simply cannot do that. So when I went to a church, I would go sit in the pew, and unless somebody called me, I stayed in the pew. That's just the way that I did that. And I think that we can bring a lot of hardship on ourselves by just always beating that same drum. You need to get your mind on whatever it is that God has called you to do, and do that.
Wow. Very good. Very good. Reverend Rob, anything you can think of, even among contemporaries, that you're like, okay, that's toxic, or that's extreme, or that's,
Well, Mom hit on a lot of it. I think sometimes we as women seem to need affirmation, so we seek that, But Mom really hit on it. You got to know who you are, and you got to know what God has called you to do, and your gift will make room for you. You do not have to go knocking down walls, knocking down doors, trying to make people acknowledge who you are. I've seen women ministers correct people from the pulpit because they didn't address them the way they felt they should have been by their title. Ooh, yeah. So I mean, those are things that I would, when I was teaching I used to teach the ministers class at New Bethel for the new ministers that were coming in, and so for women especially, there were certain things that I would try to to help them with, things that they may want to just kind of stay away from. But like Mom said, you don't invite yourself in somebody's pulpit. You just don't do that. I mean, that's like inviting yourself into somebody's house, and you wouldn't do that either. So there are just things that again, for me, it comes back to knowing who you are. I don't need your affirmation. I don't need you to tell me that, I'm this and I'm that, or acknowledge me by my title, or let me sit in your pulpit for me to know who I am in Christ and how he wants to use me. And so I think if we can get past that, then a lot of those little things that we seek for, the attention or the titles and acknowledgement, all of that just becomes really irrelevant. I'm like, Mom, I can go sit in a pew somewhere and be, I'm cool, but then they'll say, oh, I see, Reverend Woodberry back there. Why don't you come on up? And it's like, oh, okay. But, you let them move in that direction and be okay if you sit in the pew and they don't call you up. You just got to be okay with that.
Yeah. I appreciate that. Go ahead, Pastor Jeff.
Can I get a drum roll? Because we got to do something religiously incorrect here.
Let's go.
Y'all know it's me who has to bring up these.
Here it comes.
Over the last couple years, we saw a switch in the dynamic. We saw the Mary, where one of the Marys, whoever she was dressed a little risque. We saw the Tamala Mann thing, where on one of the award shows she was showing a little bit of a lot. We saw at Aretha, I think it was Aretha Franklin's funeral.
Aretha. I think it's still going on. I think that's still happening. It never ended.
It's the 24 minutes.
The funeral never ended. It just ended like 2 hours ago.
It wasn't that the funeral with a young lady's son,
Ariana Grande.
And they showed the pastor kind of,
yeah.
I mean, is this something that you guys would advise against? Is this a new wave that women can show their, I guess, sexuality?
Well, let's separate Ariana Grande from actual female preachers.
Yeah, definitely.
Pop star. I mean, I don't know where but I to Jeff's point, I like that question. What do you feel about dress being under different standards?
You want to go?
Yeah. So for me, you're gonna know that I'm a woman, 100%. Period. Whether it's from my shoes or whatever it is, you're going to know that I'm a woman. I do think that there are boundaries personally. And so I have my own preference on how I prefer to be in the pulpit, but I think that there are boundaries, because again, you don't want to be a distraction. You are surrounded by fellas, so you don't want to be a distraction. You don't want to be where everybody is looking at, whether or not your boobs is about to pop out. You know what I'm saying? Because your stuff is cut so low, or your dress is up so high, or there has to be a level of respect for yourself and how you carry yourself and how you present yourself. I don't feel like I need to dress like a man though, because I'm not a man, I'm a woman. And so, but there are ways that you can do that and still maintain a level of modesty and respect for yourself, even as you're reflecting Christ, in the pulpit or however you're serving.
I agree. I agree. I came from the old school. Then when I came into the ministry, I'm going to tell you something that happened to me when I first started preaching in the jail. I had a group called the Women of Faith and Action, and we would go into the jail on Saturdays. And at that time, all I had to have was that piece of paper that Reverend Simon gave me, that I was called to preach for New Bethel Baptist Church. And at that time, nobody was going in the jail. No preachers were in the jail. So I went in every Saturday. The first time that I went was in the summertime, and it was very hot. And I had a sundress on. It was not real revealing, but it just didn't have any sleeves in it. Just had a little sun because it was hot. And so I had that on, and we went in and we had our Bibles and everything. I'll make it short. And after I came out of there and I was on my way home, we had a very, very good event that happened that day at the city jail. And on my way home, I was reflecting that. And the Spirit said to me, "Give me a chance, Gena." Just like that. I heard those words, "Give me a chance." And I thought, what do you mean? And he said, "These men haven't seen a woman for a while. And you can't just go. That you have to give, they see you, and you have to give me a chance." I just started bawling. I just started crying because that wasn't my intent. Right. I just didn't know. And so from then on, I didn't, you didn't have to have a dress down to your knees and all that. But I never went with my body exposed like that ever again. And when I started pastoring, every Sunday I wore my clergy collar. To this day, when I'm going to be the preacher, I have that clergy collar on. I tried not to dress with earrings hanging and stuff because I just hear the voice of God saying, "Just give me a chance." And so I try to dress down as much as I can. But there are times when, you do dress up on Women's Day or whatever. But I think in this particular time in 2020, a lot of the new women ministers are overdressed, in my opinion. They don't have to have the clergy collar and all of that. But I think a lot of them are overdressed. And we're looking at all of that.
Well, I like that you brought that up because since you mentioned the clergy collar, we are going to wrap up for all of our viewers and watchers. Get your rapid fire questions ready because we'll narrow it down to one question or two, and then we'll be doing rapid fire in about 4 minutes, which means we'll have to probably shorten our responses. But I was going to say this because this is a male and female issue, but females always get picked on more. And I want to read what Big Mike, first of all, said. Big Mike, our producer, he does put in public comments once in a while. He says, "It's not you, the women, it's the men. They are the ones that need delivered." And, hey, from these restrictive rules for our young ladies in high school to the way we put down young ladies in the church to now how we look at women in the pulpit, always a distraction. Ain't nobody saying nothing about these men in these skin tight pants and these got their whole, Timbuktu all out for everybody to see. But I will say it's a male and female thing. And again, we are harder on females. But do you feel like people are putting a collar with just about anything?
Say again.
Do you feel like people are putting a collar on with just about anything? I mean, with some of our brothers, it's like you don't know if they're going to the players' ball. No. And then with some of our sisters, it's like, are you going to prom? And then you get the car. So I appreciate it. And everybody won't agree. That's okay. We're religiously incorrect. Everybody won't agree. But do you feel like it's kind of jumped the shark on the fashion thing and the fashion statement and that kind of?
Yeah.
What do you think?
You're asking me?
Yeah, either one of you.
Oh, yeah. Yes, I believe, and I think you're right about the men as well. I just think that we're overdressed so that the everything is looking at us. All of the attention is on me, and that's whether we're male or female. I think we are always doing something that takes people's mind off of God, and it brings it onto myself. Something I think Pastor Jeff said. I can't remember which one of you pastors said it, but where we're dealing with our egos, that where Paul says, I die daily. It is the death of our own personal ego that has to die. Every day we have to kill that sucker, because if we don't, we just rise up and we're just in the center of everything. It's so easy to do when you're standing on that podium. It's just easy to do. And so you have to struggle all the time, I think, where you're just not over producing yourself.
I agree.
I love that.
Overproducing yourself. Now, for the record, I just bought some new suits in Alabama. So,
listen, real quick. I got to give a big shout out to Pastor Harrison. He bought all his ministers clergy shirts and the little collars, the short sleeve ones. I still got I got my purple one, my white one, my black one, all the ones you bought for. I got to cut the bottom 2 buttons off now.
It's that cheesecake.
That cheesecake.
But you can't see it up under the suit anyway. You can't see the bottom. You know.
All right, y'all. Listen. Thank you. So Reverend Thornton, Reverend Dr. Rob. I mean, my heart is full from the discussion.
That was beautiful.
You know how much I love the both of you, my mama and my sister.
We love you too.
I love you and appreciate your ministries. And I learned so much just listening to you. I feel that these conversations, and as a Black person, you all have been there. Doesn't it get tiring being in these forums where you're asked to sort of explain Blackness, you know, in times of justice? But I'm sure it's the same for you in these conversations, but maybe we need to have more of these for our sisters in ministry, so that we can normalize the experiences and get away from how's it feel and what's this like, to just, hey, Rev, hey, Doc, just like you could do with anybody else. But I appreciate you so much. Everybody watching, let's give it up for Reverend Thornton and Reverend Dr. Rob. Put hands on the comments, say hey, say God bless you. I'm hearing you in your own house. We appreciate you all. Rapid fire is coming right up, and they're going to stay for rapid fire. Don't get scared, Sister Thornton. Don't get scared, Rev. This won't be bad.
Okay. You're ready to get your questions together. But ask them what y'all need to ask them.
But hey, if you have a rapid fire question, would you get ready to post it? We don't know if we'll get to all of them. Sometimes we're short on questions. Sometimes we have too many questions. Big Mike, our producer, always has 2 questions for us to kind of get us going. And so I'll bring him in a second. But while we're getting ready for that, please make sure you go to whether our Facebook page, our Twitter, our IG, Instagram. Make sure you like and share our page. More discussions like this will continue to be broadcast. Tag somebody and tell them to watch the rebroadcast. Tell them to watch the replay. We can do some really good talk. You can get your swag. Somebody asked me yesterday where they can get religiously incorrect swag from. We were talking about giving some away. I think we're going to start with our guest, Pastor Jeff. We're going to send Thornton and
they need them.
We're going to send
we'll rock it.
For a hoodie. And we'll get your sizes. I think I already got them from I Vote Black. So I already got your sizes. And I'll get them to you. And if you want to get your own swag, religiouslyincorrectpodcast.com. Religiously, make sure you spell it right. Religiously Incorrect Podcast. Because you know, if you spell a website wrong, you will be somewhere.
Yep.
You will be somewhere you don't want to be. I was a kid in high school and the internet was not for everybody yet. It was, I don't know if you remember this, Jeff. You're oldest. I don't know if you remember. It was whitehouse.com. Somebody had bought whitehouse.com and it was a pornography site. Most people didn't know it wasn't .gov.com. And boy, all us little boys visited whitehouse.com. We all visited the White House. All the teenagers visited the White House at least once. All right, hold on. Don't forget your flag.
Don't try to. I think that's gone. Don't try to find that now.
Yeah, don't try to find it.
Say it one more time. White House got what?
Gov.
So hey, we're gonna bring in Big Mike. We don't take a long time with rapid fire. We pass it around and give our 30, 60-second answer. Sometimes because we're preachers, we can't help it, but we'll try to keep it face. So come on, Big Mike, how you feeling, man? What you want to say?
Hey. First, oh man, Reverend Thornton, Reverend Woodberry, I enjoyed you guys tonight so much.
You.
So much. I really appreciate you guys coming on. Great show. Love your insight, your wisdom, all of that, man. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
All right, first question. Let me back up. Jeff, I apologize for not using your title. You know what I'm saying? I apologize. It sounded kind of cliche to me. A woman's worth, everybody say that, man. I just want to do something different.
Right.
Next time I got you.
It's all good.
All right, first question with a rapid fire. A few months back, we had Dr. Angel De La Cruz on, and he was talking about Mother Teresa, how she was an heiress, and she gave up all of her money to do what God called her to do. And even in the midst of that, there was times that she doubted God. Mm-hmm. So has there ever been a time in your career that, you were out there, you were preaching, you were teaching, you were evangelizing, you were saving souls? Was there any time that it got rough and you actually doubted God?
Yes. Are we supposed to say what it was, or?
I mean, elaborate on a little bit.
Yeah.
Maybe the situation if you want. You don't have to go into detail. But
And so in 91, my husband and I were expecting a son, and I was 8 months pregnant, and he was stillborn. I was singing in the choir, I was ushering, I was teaching Sunday school. I was serving God. I love God, and I was serving Him, and my baby died. So I had issues. My mom, I'm sure she, God bless her, my dad, who helped me get through that. But yeah, I questioned God about that, and not to mention the fact that the same day that our baby died, on the 6 o'clock news, when I was in the hospital room, I'm laying in my hospital room, I have the news, the TV on, they found a baby in a trash bag. Somebody threw their baby away.
Wow.
And here the baby that we wanted died. So I had issues. It took me a while to process through that. And but so yeah, I doubt it. I doubted that He loved me. I doubted that, what was the whole point, of me serving Him, and why would you let my baby die? And yeah. So yeah, we hit patches like that in our life, but that foundation that I felt like Jeremiah when he says, you know what, God, I'm really mad at you and I ain't preaching to your people yet. It's like fire shut up in my bones. It was kind of like that. Wow. That relationship. I was mad at him and I wasn't going to do this no more, but I couldn't help it because it was in me. So yeah.
Reverend Thornton?
Yeah, well, I'm thinking about the time that my car, I think it was my first year in pastoring, and I was up in Cleveland, and the car that I had, I got ready to turn the corner, and all of the molding under my steering wheel fell off in my lap, and I was afraid to drive the car, and so I knew I had to get another car. At that time, we had 5 children, and my husband was the sole breadwinner. And I needed a car. And the Spirit said, you need a new car because you're traveling so much. You're putting too much mileage on to get a used car. So I went out in the Boardman, and I went all up and down. I thought God was going to touch somebody, that would give me a chance to get a new car. I didn't have any credit. It wasn't that I didn't have good credit. I didn't have any credit because for 10 years I was building the ministry and I didn't make any money. I didn't have nothing. And so they told me I had to have $1,000 to get a new car. And so I just went from one place to the other. And I said, surely God is going to touch someone's heart, to allow me to get a car without having to put down $1,000. And I spent all day there and no place would accept it. I came home that day. I cried so hard sitting right at this place that I'm sitting at right now. And I said to God, you promised me that if I would do what you told me to do, you would take care of me. And I can't, I was embarrassed. I've been talking and preaching about, God will provide, and I'm scared to drive this car. And I'm just bawling, and the phone rang. My telephone rang. And a girl from New Bethel, who had been in my Bible class, when I answered the phone, she said, Gena, what's wrong? And I didn't know what she was talking about. I said, what do you mean? She says, all day, every time I turned around, God was saying to me, help Gena. And she said, what is wrong with you? And then I started bawling. I need a car. I ain't got no money. I just went crazy. She said, you meet me out at the Chevrolet. She and her husband both worked at General Motors. Wow. She said, meet me at the Chevrolet place. And I say this so much when I'm teaching. Her name is Ollie. I won't tell her last name. She met me out there, and that day I bought a brand new Cavalier, and she wrote a check for $1,000 down payment for that car. And I said to her, I don't know when I can pay you. And she said, it's not a gift. It's not a loan. It's a gift. Yeah. But that time I just thought God had forgotten about me, put me in a room, shut the door, turned the light out. And, and that telephone rang, and she said, what is wrong with you? I'll never forget it as long as I live.
Wow. Well, send me Ollie's phone number, because I need
all right, all the time.
You guys want to chime in?
I'll keep mine short. Yes, absolutely. But I think more so, I hate to say I haven't reached the pinnacle of totally doubting God, but definitely the depths of doubting myself in God. And, that's been, a dynamic thing to struggle with. I tend to struggle with self-esteem and anxiety at times. And I think it comes with the territory for some of us in some ways. That's the unspoken thing preachers aren't supposed to talk about, but that's why a lot of preachers suffer underweight, because they can't talk about, or they're considered whiny or needy or egotistical, whatever, or attention seeking. But thank God that we're accepting mental health and wholeness and emotional health more in the church, as opposed to just shout it out and scream it out and all this other stuff. But that's a deep thing, because it speaks to the human part of me that never feels good enough. And so I'm like, all right, God, things aren't moving fast enough, or I'm blessed, but I still feel an emptiness, or I'm not there, or I don't know what there looks like. I don't know if this is the right there, or if that's the right there, or whatever. And I'm not talking about a church assignment or nothing like that, just life in general. And so that's probably the depth. I can't say, well, this tragedy happened and I doubted God, or this happened, or I went through this depth of depression and this, but definitely self-doubt of like, God, should I just go back to the bank and count some money and,
right,
make some money, by the way.
Obviously, a transparent moment for me, probably, and I would say this is probably the first time I was going through a divorce. I went through a divorce, and in the process of me going through the divorce, my mother died, and I quit. I gave up. Didn't want to do it no more. Didn't want to preach no more. End up, my mother had somehow joined Union Baptist. I didn't know Pastor Harrison at the time. He called me. He was the one who done the funeral. At the end of the funeral, for whatever reason, the Lord told him to allow me to do not the invocation, but the altar appeal. And that became our relationship. That's how we started. That's how I ended up at Union Baptist. And, there was a flame that was sparked again.
Wow.
But for a while there, I had given up. I was done preaching.
Wow. Wow. Okay, Mike, you got to ask questions that actually give us rapid answers, because these are like life stories.
Hey, I warned you earlier, man. It was kind of loaded.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, one more. I might get in trouble for this, but for pastors out there who have churches and they're not growing, nothing fruitful is happening. When is it time? When is it time to say, all right, this ain't it right now. I might want to move on. And
I'm logging off, Mike, because what you trying to do? It's like you set me up.
I know. These questions have been on my mind all day. I've been thinking about y'all. Usually I come up with one and let it go. I've been thinking about this one. I'm just saying, it just seems like there's a lot of churches out there struggling.
Well, let me try to answer it real quick, because obviously this has happened to me. I had a church, Church of the Living Word. We moved from Youngstown to Warren. Very few people coming. Couldn't really do anything. Look at
my wife then came down here and she's over here acting up. That's all I'm calling her out.
Okay. And but in the process of that, I had just started at Wheatland too. We was working Sundays then. I was trying to leave church, go to work, come back to work, and it just wasn't working out. And I knew it wasn't working out. And no matter how much I wanted to keep the church open, I knew it was time for a change. And it was probably one of the best decisions I ever made. I end up at Agape with Pastor Todd. After that, come to find out, me and this dude stayed on the exact same street and didn't even know each other. Right. I went to his church, and my wife and I went to his church at the time, and he preached, and I'm like, yeah, everybody got one good sermon. Everybody got one. Let's try next week. He went back next week. He had another good one. And then next week, I'm like, this dude don't. He like sort of. So.
Maybe my three best, Doc. Maybe my three heavy hitters.
And I was with him for 3 years after that. And I think I became a better pastor and a better person because of the 3 years. And sometimes God allows you to go through that. And so I think we ought to see the signs and do what we got to do, make the adjustments.
Amen.
And it doesn't mean that you failed. And I think people have a hard time with that. Oh, I failed. Well, no, not necessarily. Maybe it was just for a season. Maybe it was a learning experience. I mean, there could be a lot of things that factor into that. But when you have the Holy Spirit in you, I mean, at some point, he's going to let you know what? Jake's preached one time, if it's dead, bury it. The Spirit will let you know it's time to put that down, for whatever reason. And be okay with that and be ready to move to what he has for you, next.
There's some carcasses. Around here. There's some cadavers.
They stinking? Are they stinking?
They stinking.
I'll give my answer right quick. I said this so many times. I am a prophetic, practical person. If we would be honest about how many churches start, then we would be more open to how churches might end. The fact of the matter is that beside the call of God often works beside the circumstances happening in the world or in certain regions or places. There's a need for the gospel here or there. There are people who haven't heard it, fellowships that need to be started. Many of our cities, we are in a perfect situation in Northeast Ohio, booming cities at one time, flocking people. Too many people on the west side. We need a fellowship on the east side that people can walk to church. Let's not get into splits and arguments and disagreements. Let's not get into all that.
Right.
Who doesn't get along with who had a new revelation, whatever. And if practical everyday reasons can help us to launch and build ministries, then at least in part, practical considerations might help us to bring some to an end. If you have 80,000 people and they were all flocking up here and now we're down to 30,000.
Right.
The churches we needed at 80,000 are just not. It's numbers. It's math. God is smart. He knows math. And also preachers running themselves into the ground. We have a shortage of associate ministers capable and ready to jump into pastoral roles. Not that they aren't loving, not that they aren't sincere, not that they don't, but there's a shortage there. And then there's a capacity and resource situation. So for some reason, we'll start in the flesh, but swear up and down that God's got to tell us and come down from heaven to end. And that's me. Like I've said before, most of the ideas the Black community has, especially the Black church, I'll just talk about Warren because I always do. I use Warren numbers. The 45 Black churches in Warren couldn't do it, but I bet you 15 or 20 of them could.
Right.
If they were only capacity, resource, people being together in one place. So I just feel that has to be a part of it. I mean, if you're coughing your lungs up every time you try to get to the intro of your sermon, you need to recognize the limitations of the moment. Not everybody. But, and small isn't bad, by the way. Small is not bad.
Right.
But diluted and divided church is.
Mm-hmm.
That's me.
Right. Reverend Thornton, you have any input?
Well, I agree with what you're saying. I believe that the answer is in each of us, and that a lot of times when the Spirit is trying to lead you to, when Robin said, she didn't say this tonight, but in her last sermon at New Bethel, I am out of my comfort zone. That when you get out of the comfort zone, we don't want to do that. So a lot of times the Spirit is leading you to do something that your ego doesn't allow you to do. You don't want anybody, you do feel like it is a failure. And so you just keep beating that same dead horse. So yes, everything changes. Nothing ever remains the same. Everything changes. And so you have to, one of the greatest sins I believe we make as followers of Christ is that we're in the wrong season and don't know it. We're in the wrong. A lot of times we're trying to do one thing that should be in another season. And so we have to be obedient to the Spirit. When it's time to leave, the Spirit will tell you need to get out of here.
That's right.
That's why I had to leave New Bethel. I felt comfortable there. But the Spirit said, you'll never grow beyond where you are as long as you're here. And so I just had to leave. So you have to know it, and then you have to have courage to do what the Spirit is leading you to do.
Amen.
Wow, that is excellent. I got a real rapid fire question. So the Heat made the finals. Heat or Lakers?
Lakers.
I don't know.
Don't ask Mama no sports questions.
No sports questions. I think it's gonna be the Lakers. I think it's preordained. It's gonna be the Lakers. LeBron got to get it.
Pastor Todd, I know we're over. I'm the producer, so I'm allowed.
We're church, man. We Black. we overtime 4, basically.
On Episcopalians, we get in, we get out.
Go ahead.
I asked you and Jeff this question a while ago. Now I want to ask these two ladies. How good or how bad was your trial sermon?
Well, people told me mine was good, so no.
They be lying. They be lying, Rob. They be lying to you.
They probably lying. Although I will say that my brother Manasseh said just when he started thinking about what game was about to come on TV, I wrapped it up. So he said my time was perfect. I wasn't too long. But yeah. I don't know. I think it was fine, but people were generous and kind. I think. I don't know.
Mine was so long ago. I don't even remember what I said. I'm as old as dirt.
She said it's written on tablet somewhere. Go find it. Go find it.
You were terrible.
I had to get one in on you. I had to get one in. I do it when I'm far enough away for you. You can't hit me. You can't throw nothing at me. He said, go find the scrolls if you want to know.
I'm done.
Hey, was there any more given to us?
No, I think that was it. You know, we didn't get any sent in, but I think we'd love to have the both of you back just to chop it up and have a replay. But it's been a pleasure and a joy. This was the best, one of the best episodes I've been a part of, hearing you and listening to you.
I am quite sure this is the only episode I've ever given a stank. You know, that's
the stank face.
You know, what's he saying?
Oh, I got a good one. Okay, here's a quick one. Sonia Carter, Deacon is Sonia Carter from my church, said, do lady pastors say, I'm fixing the clothes?
I don't say I'm fixing to. I might say as I come to a close, but
as I come on my way to my seat.
In my closing. And as an Episcopal priest now, I don't even have to do that. I preach 10 minutes. It's a done deal.
Mama Thornton, you said you had a story about that?
We have a story about the fitting. See, I didn't come out of the South. My family was in the North. And I'd never heard of fitting to do something. Okay. I just never remember hearing it. But one of my members was telling me about an accident she had. And she would always drive a big Cadillac. She was driving a Cadillac and she said, Reverend, she said, I was getting ready, I was fitting to turn into this parking lot. And she said, this man was coming down, and I said to myself, he fitting to hit me. And he hit me. I almost rolled off on the chair on the floor. She said, as soon as I said he fitting to hit me, he hit me. And I almost rolled off the chair.
That is wonderful.
I had never heard that before.
Man, it's hard to keep a straight face when you hear stuff from members and you're trying to keep a straight face. Listen, we got to go. My kids got school in the morning. Some of you got to work. This has been amazing. I know everyone enjoyed it. If you're watching us, like, share, tag in the comments, tag somebody you want to watch this. Tell them it is worth their time. The audio will be up on our audio feed, Spotify, Apple Music. Y'all about to be famous. Y'all about to be.
Lord.
We didn't tell them beforehand because they wouldn't have came on if we had do all this. It'll be everywhere you can find the podcast, YouTube, Facebook, all of your audio feeds. We love it. We appreciate it. We don't want to belabor the time, but we thank you so much for being with us.
So much again,
Mike. I'm gonna take Big Mike out first, and then just thank you guys and let you guys go. Let me get that comment out of here.
Thank you for having us.
And let you guys go, and we'll wrap up. I mean, it's late, so we'll probably have to do another day. We'll wrap up and call and chat with you. But love you.
Thank you. Good night,
Thank you so much again. Appreciate you.
You all take care.
Okay, you too. Bye-bye.
Pastor Jeff.
That was a great show,
night.
Man. That was a great show, man.
Amazing, man.
It was. I enjoyed every bit of what both of them had to say.
Yeah. I mean, it was incredible. I think this is the value of having these discussions. This is what needs to be talked about and even more. And it's not to push an agenda. I mean, your convictions are going to be convictions, and that's fine. We're not walking in and stomping in our churches tomorrow saying this, that, and the other. That's not the point. But it's wonderful to have the conversation, to open up our eyes, our minds, and our hearts, and just talk about life. And ministry is a part of our lives. Life is a part of our ministries. And so I think it's a great way to expose people to what they might not know and might not realize, and let God do the rest in all of our lives. So, Jeff, love you, man. Appreciate you. This show was a blast, man. Doesn't this make me feel good after preaching on Sundays? I'm glad we did it on Sundays.
Wonderful. I'm about to go back on my motorcycle, though.
Right. Listen. Somebody take this brother's keys, whatever y'all start motorcycles up with. What do y'all do? Like a lighter? How do you start? I never rode a
my motorcycle must be as old as Gena's first sermon.
Does your motorcycle have a wick? You got to put gunpowder in that joint.
No, we are crazy, man. We are crazy.
Listen, we love y'all. Y'all take care. This is Religiously Incorrect. And
next week, 9 o'clock, same bat time, same bat place. Amen. Same channel.
Take care. Peace out.
Deuces.
He's gone, so we'll holler at you guys tomorrow.
That was good.
Yeah, it was great.
It
was great.
Yeah.
It was worth the time and everything. Everybody was engaged the whole time.
I was going to say, people actually held on until the end.
Yeah. Number stayed up. So
we still live because it's 20.
Yeah, my bad.